Unfortunately, most of us at some point are going to make a meaningful financial mistake that's going to cost us tens of thousands of dollars or more. And when that happens, what do you do? How do you overcome that? Whether you were overinvested in the stock market at exactly the wrong time, or you liked a company and you invested in it, it didn't go the way that you thought. Another common one is you go through a divorce and it costs you tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars. How do you get past that? How do you get past the mental challenge? And the secret is to not let it compound. I've been a financial advisor for over 20 years. And unfortunately, oftentimes when people are in that situation, one mistake begets another mistake. So the first thing we have to do is we have to pause and we have to take a deep breath and we have to try to fix it right away. That's the first impulse is how do I make this right? How do I fix that? And unfortunately, for many of us, that's going to result in another mistake. So rule number one is we want to make good decisions, and we make good decisions from a place of calm and a place of rationality. So many of my viewers are super savers. They do a great job of saving. Mea culpa, I'm a super saver as well, and I'm glad to be a super saver. I'm also kind of a frugal person. And that has put me in a situation where I could retire early, and for that, I am very grateful. However, it can be hard for us when we make a financial mistake. Let's say we make a mistake that costs us $20,000. Let's say the stock market is going down and it's really scary, like at the beginning of COVID. And maybe we take some chips off the table right before the stock market corrects. There were a lot of people that did that. And so the question is, how do you overcome that? And unfortunately, when it comes to that stock market correction and taking those chips off the table, one mistake can lead to another mistake. For instance, during COVID, people, it was a 30% correction in 4 weeks, less than 20 trading days. That was the biggest stock market correction, the quickest stock market correction in the S&P 500's history. And many people were like, I'm going to get out now. This could cause a depression and the market's down 20, 25, 30%. I'm going to get back in after it bottoms out, after the market's down 50, 60, 70%. And you know what? Fortunately, that never happened. And the stock market started coming back and coming back pretty quickly. And there were people left on the sidelines. So if that's you, what do you do? And this is just one example. You might have invested in a company that you thought had really good prospects, and unfortunately, it didn't go so well. And maybe you lost $20,000 or $30,000 or more on that investment. So what do you do? The first thing is to not make the matter worse, to take a pause, to take a deep breath, to talk to some people, to get it out in the open. Because sometimes when you make a mistake and you keep it quiet and you don't share it, particularly if you're married with your spouse, then there's this tendency to, try to make it right before it comes out in the open. But that can lead you to get more aggressive and to make decisions from a place where you're not thinking rationally and there's a sense of urgency. You want to catch up. You want to repair this mistake. So job number one is you just take a deep breath, to pause, to talk to some people that you trust. Hopefully you're working with a financial advisor. Mea culpa, I was a financial advisor for over 20 years. But hopefully you have somebody that you can have this conversation with. And when I've seen people do this and they fess up and they say, here's what happened, here's where I'm at now, how do I get out of this situation? Then it's easier to come up with another long-term strategy that might take 5, 7, 10 years, but will get to minimize the damage of that mistake. The other thing is, as I said in the open, realize that you're not alone, that all of us have made mistakes. I've made mistakes that have cost me tens of thousands of dollars. And fortunately, I have the vantage point of having helped hundreds of people and help them get back on track. And so more often than not, there is a possibility of getting back on track. Oftentimes it's saying, let's get back to our long-term asset allocation. Sometimes there's this temptation to try to catch up. Just as an example, this is not financial advice. I don't know your situation, but let's say your long-term asset allocation is 70% stocks, 30% bonds. Let's say somebody blew out of the market got scary. They blew out of their stocks towards the bottom, and then, of course, the market ripped back right back up, and they were left holding cash and wondering what to do now. So, again, the best thing to do is if you're married, have that conversation with your spouse. Hopefully, you and your spouse were on board when you made that decision. I've seen where that's not always the case. But bringing it out in the open is step number one. Step number two is, c- what's the game plan to get you back to that long-term allocation? Now, we want to learn from that. If you blew out of that asset allocation once when things got scary, it's probably exposing you to too much downside that causes you not just pain, but angst. And it caused so much pain that you decide to sell. So the the goal of an asset allocation is to help you reach your long-term goals, but to put you in a situation where you can let your equities grow for you over time without blowing out. So ask yourself what caused that. Now, oftentimes people will say, "Oh, I'll never do that again." But unfortunately, if you did it once, there's a good chance that you'll do it twice. So really look at that asset allocation. Avoid the temptation of saying, "I want to catch up." And maybe say, you know what, if that pain was too great once, if it happened again, it might be too great again the next time. So think about whether that asset is correct for you. And and then come up with a game plan to get back to that long-term asset allocation. That could be something that you do over a short period of time or over several months or even over several years. But where I really see people get hurt from making a financial mistake is when they stay in that position and they don't face the music and say, "I made a mistake." They kinda double down on it. So the best way when I've seen people be nervous about the stock market is they say, "Okay, I want to relieve some of the pain, but if I'm wrong, if A, B, or C happens, I'm gonna get back in." So that you're not out of the market for a couple years. Because if you take a 20% loss, yes, that's going to be painful. But if you take a 20, 30, 40% loss and you stay out of the market for several years, that can really have long-term implications. Excuse me. So the best approach in a situation is say, if you're gonna make this change, here's the things that would get you back in either when the market or the economy does this or when a certain amount of time passes. Because very likely you don't wanna be somebody that's out of the market for 5, 6, 7 years, waiting for the market to feel safe to get back in. So when we make a mistake, I strongly encourage you to bring it out in the open, to have conversations, and to get back in a position where you can make good, solid decisions again from a place of rationality and calm. If you like this video, the YouTube algorithm says you'll like this video next. Thanks for watching this one. Bye-bye.